It's Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're going to take a look at the monster that is the Antec Flux Pro. Now, for those of you that are looking at getting a slightly larger case because you want to house larger components, then this potentially could be on your shopping list. Now, at the moment here in the UK, at the end of May 2025, this is retailing for somewhere in the region of about £170, so it's not particularly cheap. But there is a lot of engineering, and also it comes stocked with lots of fans in there as well, lots of other options for customizing your builds, etc. And it's also one of the few cases on the market at the moment, at least in the kind of the retail normal sector for the enthusiast market, which can actually house two 420mm radiators, one in the front and also one in the top. Potentially, if you wanted to, you could always put a 360 in the bottom as well if you're really looking at going overkill, but obviously the flexibility, the choices are all entirely down to you. Now, before we start this, I should say as well, massive shout out to the legend that is Colin Hilton. Thank you very much, Colin. Colin's brought this one down to us to take a look at. This came originally from scan.co.uk here in the UK, and again, there'll be links in the video description so you can check out pricing there. It's also available in other places such as Amazon, all the kind of usual retailers, so do check the links for the latest and best pricing. Also, for those of you that are interested, if you're not particularly keen on the white version, you want something a little bit more kind of in keeping with office surrounds, you can actually get this in black also. There is also a distinctive wooden trim, which is actually real wood around the outside edges. If you go for the white version that we've got here, you've got this rather pale oak. If you go for the black version, it comes with a darker wood, which I believe is potentially mahogany. Again, links for all that kind of stuff will be in the video description. For those of you looking for a more kind of blingy PC, unfortunately at the time of recording this video there isn't a version that comes with addressable RGB lighting, although for some bizarre reason the actual fan hub, which is included free of charge with the case, does actually have multiple outputs for ARGB lighting. So potentially there might be one in the kind of the future coming, or potentially if you just want to add a little bit of RGB into this, there is a hub in there already. So for those of you looking to do that, you're ready to go from the time you open the box. And talking of opening the box, first of all, let's take a look at the accessories box and see what we actually get. Trying to make room on the desk with this case is actually quite difficult, so I do apologise if the shot framing isn't quite what it would be. This is about the furthest I can get the camera back and try and get everything in, so my apologies in advance. But anyway, moving on. So this is the Flux Pro accessories box, and inside of here you actually get some pretty useful stuff. You get all the usual things that you'd expect to see, such as the kind of owner's manual, also power supply installation guide, because there are multiple methods of installing a power supply in this particular chassis. Also included, there are two additional fan grille covers. As you'll see from some of the B-roll, there are actually two reverse blade fans also included in the bottom. That's included in the price. If you want to, if you don't like that look, you can actually take those out and replace these with the covers to give you a more uniform or streamlined look at the basement section for the power supply. There's also some cable ties in that particular bag, and also going back to the power supply installation, there is a extra power supply mounting. So this actually has two options for power supply mounting. You can go with the more traditional method, so this is using this bracket which goes into the back of the case, but in the standard configuration it comes with a kind of rotated section, so the power supply can go in at 90 degrees, which for people with modular power supplies, if you're someone who likes tweaking and tinkering, you want easier access to that, you can just mount your power supply in at 90 degrees so your modular connections are all facing you at the back of the case. Again, potentially that might be of interest to you, but don't worry, you can mount your power supply either way. Also, just to clarify what I said earlier, the trim is actually birch on this particular model, not oak, so my apologies, and it also discusses what birch is all about and why they've chosen it for this case. Also included, to help those of you that are possibly new to it, or just when you're doing your build anyway, it comes with this plastic container with all the screws you'll need to assemble the PC, and there's also some spares, some thumb screws, etc, etc. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's take a look at the case itself, and we'll start off with the front. Now, the front is one of those things which is going to be kind of like a Marmite type thing. For those of you that don't know what Marmite is, it's something which we refer to that people either love or hate. And this design on the front of the Flux Pro is something which is a little bit unusual. It's designed to kind of reduce turbulence for the fans in the front due to the shaping of this, and also give it a little bit of a design element. Now, if you want to, you can obviously remove this. I would probably leave it in place. It is actually acting as a dust filter as well. It's actually quite easy to remove as well. There is kind of like indentation at the bottom, so you just grab the bottom and tug it forward. And then there's a couple of little clips which go into a recess at the top. This section is pretty good. It's reasonably rigid, so quite nice and easy to take out and clean. There isn't a mesh filter behind here, which some people would like to see, but saying that, the actual mesh on here, the metal mesh, is actually quite good and does stop the majority of the dust from coming in. And with that out of the way, we can see the 3 included fans. So these are in the Flux Pro. These are 140mm fans, and they are kind of noise reduced fans from Antec. You've got rubber mountings around the outside edges, front and back as well. So yeah, it's ready to go straight out of the box. So you have got 3 140mm fans. They're all PWM as well. Not RGB, unfortunately, which is a little bit odd because the actual fan blades themselves are a kind of like opaque plastic. So potentially they maybe could have done that, but sadly they haven't in this instance, for those RGB lovers out there. But if you want a more kind of refined looking PC, I think this is going to be absolutely fine. And of course, having this kind of size on the front means you can also, if you wanted to, install a 420mm radiator, 360mm, 240, 280s, all that kind of stuff. So lots of options and choices there, and it's actually relatively open behind it as well. So if you do want to kind of get the most airflow in that you can, that is absolutely great. Also, this section is actually modular for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. It doesn't make a great deal of difference. Now, if you undo the 6 screws on this section, you can actually move the whole thing either up a little bit or down a little bit. So there's a gap at the top and the bottom. So if you want to get a little bit more air towards the bottom, move it towards the bottom. If you want a bit more air towards the top, move it towards the top. I don't really know if that adds actually any value to the actual case itself. Let me know what you think in the comment section. For those people installing possibly radiators and things, I guess it's easier because you can just take the whole bracket out, put your stuff in, put it all back in. But you know, realistically, I don't think it adds a great deal of value. You've got a little notch there which kind of lines it up so you can see how you can move it around. Again, I think it's a little bit pointless, but let me know what you think. Next, we'll take a look at the side section, and we'll take a look at why this is the Pro version. Not only is it significantly bigger than the standard Flux, but it also comes with something for professional use, which you might find useful. So there's an LCD display here, which actually will display either your CPU temperature or your GPU temperatures. It works via software, which is kind of okay. These types of things, because this is actually so basic, I would prefer to have seen maybe some thermocouples that you can just attach near certain components so you can measure it that way. Just another piece of software you have to install on your computer. Unfortunately, it is quite lightweight, and you can choose to either have just the CPU temp, just the GPU temp, or both of them. Those options are there, and you can change it from Celsius to Fahrenheit and all that kind of stuff. Also, this whole section is ventilated as well, so with the same mesh that we've got on the front of the case, which is kind of nice. And also you've got this 4mm tempered glass panel. The glass comes out relatively easily. It's essentially a kind of toolless design, so all you do is grab behind at the back here and push this forward, and the glass will come out, and it's just held on ledges there. So just remove that and you can take it out of the way. So now with the glass out of the way, we can take a close look inside, and the first thing you'll see at the bottom, which actually I don't particularly like the look of, is these fans that are on the top here. They are reverse blade ones, so it's going to get your graphics card, hit it with some cool air, which is nice. And also they are fully removable and also interchangeable. So if for some reason you want to put one over the power supply area, you can move those along, etc. The choice is yours. Again, reverse blade fans, so great for keeping your GPU cool. Personally, I would have liked to have seen something more along the lines of what they did with the LAN Cool 207, where the power supply is kind of up this front section, moving the fans down a little bit, so you've got just a nicer look, and maybe even sync them into the shroud. Like I said, if you want to, if you don't like the look of these, you can remove them, replace them with those brackets which are included in the box, so it's got a nice flat uniform design. Realistically, with 3 140mm fans up the front here, you're going to get a ton of air coming in here, so keeping your GPU cool in this isn't going to be a particular problem. And in terms of GPU support, this case is massive, so it's just over 21 inches tall, 21 inches deep, and around about 10 inches wide, so it is quite a chunky boy. When it comes to graphics card support, depending on what you put in here, radiator-wise, you've got around about 455mm between the end and kind of up here. So 5090s, 4090s, that sort of stuff is going to fit in here absolutely no problems at all. When it comes to cooling, so if you're looking at using a larger tower cooler for your CPU, this will support tower coolers up to 190mm in height, so that is absolutely huge. Of course, really this case is screaming out for water cooling, but if you want to keep it simple, go with the air cooler up to 190 mils. When it comes to motherboard support, so it will support up to EATX. Now, EATX isn't really a properly defined standard as such, but there's an awful lot of room there, and this back section is relatively flat as well, so if your motherboard is going to overhang a little bit, it's absolutely fine. They've spaced out the cable grommets to pass through the wiring a little bit further over, so if you've got an ATX board, it's got a little bit further to stretch. Again, EATX is going to be absolutely fine there. You've also got extra room down this side, which is kind of empty, so you've got extra space for maybe water cooling components, reservoirs, that type of thing. Pretty much all of the holes which are used for pass-throughs do have rubber grommets, which I'm very pleased to say. So on this far side here, and also the pass-throughs there. The ones at the top don't have, which I don't think is a particular problem. Actually, it's probably going to aid installation and also removal, should you ever need to. It's quite nicely hidden there. You've actually got a massive amount of room as well at the top. So between the radiator top mount section here and the top of your motherboard, you're looking at somewhere around about 80 millimeters. So that is absolutely huge. So even if you're using the thickest radiators that are available in the kind of mainstream market and also chunky fans, you're still going to have plenty of room to plug in things like your fan connections along the top there, and also your EPS connections, which sometimes can be a little bit swamped when it comes to water cooling. Trying to get those cables in can be a little bit challenging, but with that much drop there, it's going to be very easy indeed. Also at the back, you do have a matching fan. So the ones on the front, you've also got an additional one on the back there, again, as a 140. You can swap it out for 120 should you wish to, but realistically, you've kind of paid the money. You might as well keep what is in here. When it comes to radiator support on the top again, so up to a 420 in the top, 360s, 280s, 240s, etc, etc. So you can put 3 140s in the top as well if you want to, fans, 3 120s, again, lots and lots of room there. The same goes for the bottom, so if you remove the fans and also the mounting brackets, you can put a 360mm radiator in the bottom if you're going for a open loop situation. For a closed loop or AIOs, you don't want to put a 360 in the bottom. That would be an absolutely horrible thing to do, because the air is going to go towards the top and block out the pump, and it's going to fail very, very quickly. So generally, don't do that. Other points of interest on this side of the case, so we do have some flexibility when it comes to actually mounting. So there's a screw here and also a matching one on the far side. Undo those two, and this top section actually comes out in its entirety. So if you are doing some DIY, some maintenance, it's very easy to get access to it, or for installing a radiator and then putting it all back in there. Again, if you're going for open loop and you're kind of testing out fittings, etc., that is going to be very useful. The bottom section as well comes out very easily. This is also a thing which I see more and more these days, is this section here, which is ventilated, won't be able to come out on its own. So you're going to have to take the glass out to gain access. So if maybe you're thinking, well, I want to move some fans or I want to do something to the power supply, you do have to remove the glass to enable to remove this, because it basically rests on it. You can then just push this up and move this out of the way. It's nice to see they've put a kind of a tint over the top of the LCD, so you can remove this panel in its entirety without having any wires or anything kind of challenge its removal. And then that reveals the LCD display, so you get some close-ups of that. And also you can see also in here the power supply basement. Also, if we move this around a little bit more, you can see there is this section here for if you are going to mount your power supply in the 90 degrees rotation. So that way your power input is going to go here. You have got the pass-through cable included, so you can plug that in there. You've got your exhaust coming from your power supply there, and then that will mean that your modular cables are going to be directly at the back rather than being on this side. But again, if you want to, you can mount it either way. It's absolutely fine. Also, which you're probably noticing on camera, is the fact that this grille at the bottom, like most of these, because it is designed for airflow, is actually see-through as well. So you're going to maybe want to think about white cables in the bottom here, so they don't stick out like a sore thumb. Potentially you could put some backing on here to hide it if you wanted to. But that is unfortunately one of the trade-offs with massive airflow cases, that they are perforated, so you are able to see inside to some extent. When it comes to the PCI Express removal brackets at the back, so this is actually interesting because there's 8 slots. Normally we tend to have 7, which is the norm for ATX. So you've got a little bit extra room there. So potentially if you're putting in multiple graphics cards, if you're putting this into a situation for maybe AI creation or video editing, rendering, that sort of thing, mining possibly, then you've got a little bit more extra room for putting more PCI Express cards in. All of the slots are fully removable. It doesn't support vertical mounting out of the box. There is a separate accessory which is available from Antec. So if you do want to vertically mount your GPU, which I think actually would look really nice in here to fill up some of this void, then you can do that, but it's an extra expense. Now, of course, you can get universal mounts out there in the wild, so depending on what you get and what you need in terms of PCI Express cabling, then that could increase the price substantially. Now, I'll turn the case around so we can take a look at the back, and actually whilst doing that, something else which actually is quite evident of this case when you get it is actually the weight. So you're looking around like 15 kilos, which is actually pretty heavy for a case. It's about double what most cases tend to be, around about 7 or 8 kilos. So there is a significant weight to this. Now, unfortunately, one of the reasons why this was actually purchased by Colin is actually he wanted to migrate his existing PC into this case because of the extra room, he liked the look of it, etc. But due to the fact that it is actually quite heavy, and Colin, you probably won't mind me saying, but he is a slightly elderly gentleman, it's a big lump to move around, and especially as soon as you put your big graphics cards in, your water cooling, your fans, your motherboard, cooler, etc., that is going to add significantly to the weight. So when this is all kitted out, it's pretty easy to see this being in the kind of 20 kilos range, maybe even more depending on your coolers and your configuration. So do bear that in mind. It's very, very heavy and also very, very big. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's take a look at the back. So we've got the pass-through section in here. So this is installed as a default, like I said previously, and you're probably seeing from some B-roll. You can take that out and put in a standard power supply bracket for the traditional mounting option. That's entirely down to you. You've got the removable PCI Express brackets there. Also, there's some cable management tracks there. So if you want to make it nice and tidy on your desk in an open scenario where people can see it, you can run your cables out of the IO shield down through here, put some cable wraps in there to keep things nice and tidy if you wanted to. Lots of ventilation as well, although it is using a kind of a slightly unusual layout. This is kind of Antec's thing, using the double triangles, which aren't that good for airflow. It's nice and open because there's lots of punch outs, but it's not quite as good as what it would be if it was hexagonal or some other designs, but it's going to be absolutely fine. You've got the fan in there, like we said. You can change that to a 120 if you want to, 140 as standard. And at the very top, you've got this little lip here, so you just get your fingers underneath there and you can pop the top off and gain access to everything in that top section. Now, before we get on to the rest of it, let's take a look at the bottom. So the bottom section, you have got a massive air filter in there. Nice mesh as well. Nice thin mesh, which is great for trapping dust, etc. And it is the full length, nice and easy to put in and pull out, nice and easy to clean, etc. And also with that, you can see we've got the same sort of design here, so the larger triangles. Also, there are 4 screws here, so there is actually a hard disk drive mounting area in here. If you want to take that out, you can do just 4 screws, and you can take that out if you want to, or move it forward or back. If you're using a radiator in the front, you might want to move it back a little bit. Again, choices are yours. The feet on here, pretty good. You're looking just under about 20 mil. So it is actually raising it up off the deck a little bit. So that's going to be great for getting some airflow up and underneath. Again, something which Antec have done well in the past, whereas people like Leanne Lee are starting to do the opposite, trying to make PCs a little bit smaller by putting smaller feet on, which is reducing airflow. So I'm glad to see that Antec have kind of stuck with their guns and gone with nice raised feet. Okay, so next we'll take a look at the top section. So the top section, again, we've got that kind of mesh look on the top there, nice and easy to breathe through. You also got your front panel section here. So you've got a power button, a reset button next to it, then you've got a combo headset mic jack, 2 USB type A's, so they are going to be your 5 gigabit per second, and also you've got a USB type C, 10 gigabit per second. And next out at the end there is a temperature button, which is wired into the display, so you can toggle between Fahrenheit, Celsius, etc., or CPU or GPU temps. Again, like I said, removing this is relatively straightforward, so just get your fingers or a nail underneath there and pull outward, and it's on those kind of pogo pins. This bit, just this bit on its own, is actually really heavy, so this has got to be getting on for a kilo at least, if not more. It's a very weighty case, which is something which is not always evident from the actual pictures. You look at it and think, yeah, that's really cool, but it's also really, really heavy. Anyway, moving on, so this is the mounting section for your radiators or fans, should you wish to use it. Again, if you take out a screw here and here, this entire section is removable, so for gaining access to EPS connectors, for taking out your radiator, if you're bleeding an open loop system, that kind of stuff, then that is all very easy to do. And last of all, let's take a look in the back. So this is the back section. You've got some perforations on the bottom as well. Again, if you're using the fans which are on the bottom to pull in some fresh air to head in towards your GPU, then you can use it for that. And also it's going to allow some air to get into things like hard drives, etc., etc. Removing the side panel, same sort of thing. So there's a little notch in the back there. So you just get your fingers in it and that just pops out. Again, another very heavy panel. And then that reveals everything which is going on in the back here. So it's actually quite a nice layout, and because you've got a lot of space, because obviously it's so physically big, there's lots of room to put drives and for cable management, that sort of thing. So basement section, very nice and open. Again, depending on your power supply and how you mount it, potentially you might have your modular cables facing out this way, or potentially they'll be facing in that way. Whichever way you do it, choice is entirely up to you. Again, we've got these pass-throughs, punch-outs, etc. for mounting your cables too, keeping things nice and tidy. Also, they've integrated this kind of management channel as well. So it's a dual-sided channel. And in the instructions and on the kind of online blurb, they're recommending that you put your I/O cables in the left side of the channel and your power cables in the right. Makes a lot of sense, keeps things nice and tidy. You've also got the Antec Velcro straps on there to keep things nice and tidy. Loads of pass-throughs again, like we said previously. Up in the top corner, we've got the fan controller hub, and also there is an addressable RGB element to it as well. All the cables for that are routed down through here. It does need SATA power. Now this is something which a lot of companies do these days, and it really bothers me, is the fact that this SATA cable kind of ends here. Now clearly it wouldn't have cost a great deal extra to make that go underneath there to keep things tidy. Otherwise you've got to have some of your power supply running up here and plugging into the SATA cable, which I think is a little bit of a misstep. Again, this is almost 200 quid's worth of case. Little things like that do make a difference at this price point, in my opinion. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, it's all been cable managed nicely out of the factory. You also got lots of places for installing things like hard drives, as we've already said. So I think you can get up to about 8 drives in here in total. So you can put in these removable sections here, which are on thumb screws. You can put in a 3.5-inch drive, or you can put a 2.5-inch drive if you want to. Again, they're removable. So if you want to have that space for maybe some fan controllers, fan hubs, that sort of stuff, you can put it in there. Both of those are removable. So that's 2 drives in there. You've also got another drive cage here at the bottom, plastic one, so you can put a 2.5 or a 3.5 inch in there. And also you can mount one on the top, so there's another little thumb screw there which you can undo, move this tray backwards, and you can put another drive on there. So plenty of drive storage there, and if that isn't enough, there's also another 2 mounts here for 2.5-inch drives. Again, these are on removable screws, so just lift those up, put your drives in there. You can leave those out if you want to. Again, if you're mad into RGB and you want to put another hub or something there, then it's another space should you wish to. Also, when it comes to cable management, not only have you got this central channel and all the punch outs dotted around, you've also got some straps in here as well. So Velcro straps in the sides there for things like your EPS cables, fan cables, all that kind of stuff. So very easy to keep this nice and neat, even though there is actually quite a lot going on here already. So you've got 6 fans included from the factory. So 3 140s at the front, a single 140 at the back, the 2 120s at the bottom. So all that is in there all ready to go. You've also got your front panel connections and also your HD audio, USB, etc., Type C, all that kind of stuff. Most of it is all whited out. There's a little bit of ketchup and mustard going on here, but it's not really a huge distraction. Also, from the actual fan hub itself, you've got a single PWM plug and also your ARGB. So plug those into your motherboard and then you can route that all up into the hub at the top here. You've actually got all of the fans plugged in pretty much to go. So there is 5 ports on there, and also there are, let's see, 5 ports for addressable RGB as well. So yeah, if you wanted to put RGB stuff in here, you've got 5 ports there to distribute, and of course your motherboard's probably gonna have 1 or 2 anyway, so that's absolutely fine. So yeah, tons and tons of room in here, tons of flexibility. It basically does everything that you'd want to in a case. My only criticism, which is probably unjust, is the fact that it's so big and it is so heavy. It's a shame that these features didn't translate to the original Flux. Whether or not they could have done it at the same price, I don't know. Given the choice personally, if I had a bigger house and a bigger desk, then I would absolutely love to have one of these, because yeah, it's just gonna have a ton of airflow. It's gonna keep all your components nice and cool. You've got really easy access to everything. If you want to put tons of hard drives in, you can do. If you want to put a massive graphics card in, you can do. You can put any basic combination of radiators and fans in here. The sky is the limit, it really is. And also, I think personally, it actually does look quite nice. Although, I'm not entirely convinced by the addition of the wood trim on modern PC components. It's become, I think, a little bit of a fad, and it kind of reminds me of old cars like Jaguars and old Ford cars and Triumph of the 70s and 80s, where they'd have like wood trim as being a kind of an enhancement. Whereas most people, I think personally, if you're buying a car, they most likely steer away from wood trim because it just looks a little bit naff. But anyway, that's just my personal opinion. Obviously, if you're someone who is kind of against the whole wood trim thing, you can just take it out and paint it anyway. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, I'm not entirely convinced by the wood trim stuff at the moment. I think it's one of those things which is, yeah, not so much Marmite, but it's kind of like, has it had its day? I don't know. Let me know. So there we go. That has been the Antec Flux Pro, a tour around it, so you can see what it's all about. Again, I think I've kind of summed up my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I think this is perfect for arguably the stereotypical American market, where kind of bigger is better, which is that kind of cliche from going back to the cars and basically everything. This is perfect. This reminds me of an American muscle car. It's just big. It does lots of things, loads of room, loads of power potentially inside it. But I think for some of us in the kind of the UK market, some European markets, and just places where you live in a smaller apartment, this is probably a little bit on the big side, in which case I would strongly suggest taking a look at the Antec Flux, not the Flux Pro, because it is considerably smaller, but very, very similar design language and not quite as flexible on the kind of fan arrangements and some of the heights in it as well, but certainly definitely worth a look. So potentially do take a look at those. I'll link actually both in the video description, both the black versions and also the white versions, which you may find interesting. But like I said, please do let me know what you think about this one in the comment section below. Is £170 here in the UK too much for a case these days, especially a bigger one? I don't know. I think things are heading in that direction, which is a little bit concerning for me. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, smash the like button. If you want to see more content like this on a daily basis, maybe consider hitting subscribe and also that chime notification. That way you'll be notified of future video releases. But for now, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews now too. And hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.